I'm happy we still have a show, too, I guess.
Jimmy Kimmel can't say that anymore, though. The late-night host taken off air indefinitely for what he said in his Monday night monologue.
The Maga gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
He went on to mock Donald Trump's reaction to the shooting of Charlie Kirk, a right-wing political activist and hugely influential ally of the president.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
It's not the first time Kimmel has made fun of Trump, and the comedian's departure clearly put a smile on the face of the president. Writing on his social media platform, the ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel Show is cancelled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible.
While I have your attention, is anyone hiring?
Stephen Colbert is another TV host who was consistently critical of Trump. His show was cancelled by CBS in July for financial reasons. Though look at the president's reaction and prediction back then. I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next.
Trump must go! Jimmy Kimmel stays!
Now that prediction has become reality, there are fears that critics of the president are being systematically silenced.
These are the people that were all against, cancel culture, or suddenly, if you're not saying things the right way or you're upsetting them for some reason, they're going to come after you, they're going to sue you. I don't know what's going to happen to Kimmel, but these are dark days.
Kimmel's removal has also been condemned by leading Democrats like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Though it seems Donald Trump isn't done yet, he also appeared to encourage NBC to cancel other late-night shows too. And just 2 months ago, Paramount settled a lawsuit brought by the president. Now he's suing the New York Times. Amid suggestions of censorship of traditional media, alternative platforms are thriving.
There was no civility in the celebration of political assassination.
Here's the president's right-hand man on Charlie Kirk's podcast, signalling an intention to limit freedom of speech.
So when you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out. And hell, call their employer.
And while the president is in the UK, the White House is preparing an executive order believed to be aimed at political violence and hate speech from left-wing groups.
He posted, the word is, and it's a strong word at that, Jimmy Kimmel is next to go in the untalented late-night sweepstakes, which is alarming because I don't know if you know this, Jimmy Kimmel is me.
Jimmy Kimmel's been a TV host in America for more than 2 decades. Now the future of his show, and others that criticise those in power, is unclear in a country known as the land of the free.
And I'm joined now by writer and broadcaster Jon Sopel. Jon, thank you very much for joining us. Could I start off by just getting your reaction to this?
Well, I just my mind went back to J.D. Vance coming over to Europe and lecturing us about the death of free speech. And you hear what's happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and you think, well, it's not the death of free speech, it's the death of irony. Because the idea that ABC, one of the foremost broadcasters in America, would lose its license by the equivalent of Ofcom, which in America is the Federal Communications Commission, because of a kind of comic monologue that Jimmy Kimmel did one night after the death of Charlie Kirk. I mean, that doesn't really square with free speech and free comment and being able to say what you like.
So is this censorship plain and simple as you see it?
I think it's a way of piling on pressure on American networks so that they bend the knee to Donald Trump's will. And the satirists who were on late night, Stephen Colbert, who was on CBS News, he's gone. And that was not over something he'd said particularly, but just Trump hated him. And there was a big merger and acquisition that was going through. So he was thrown overboard. Now we see Jimmy Kimmel thrown overboard. And there's talk that next in Donald Trump's sights is Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers at NBC. Look, the idea that there is a free speech kind of absolute in America is frankly ludicrous, given what you see is happening on a daily basis where there are incredible threats being placed against broadcasting executives that they have to do what Donald Trump wants or else.
And the killing of Charlie Kirk, do you see that as a point at which this debate, which was already pre-existing, has changed things?
The murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk was an appalling, appalling act. And I do not doubt that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and others are deeply affected by what has happened. And I think there is a profound sense of shock. But equally, I think that they're using it as an opportunity as well at the same time to do some of the things that maybe they didn't have license to do beforehand in terms of intimidating the media. And you look at the legal actions that are piling up, the writs that Donald Trump has issued against the New York Times most recently, but also against the Wall Street Journal, and other legal action that he has taken to kind of intimidate the US media. And you have somebody like the Associated Press being banned from traveling with the President of the United States because they refused to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, as Donald Trump has decreed. Now, if this isn't an interference in free speech, I don't know what is.
You obviously were out in the US covering Trump's first term. Is there a way of comparing this to then?
I think Donald Trump had very similar instincts in the first term, but not necessarily the wherewithal to do what he wanted to do. I think it was a chaotic administration where there hadn't been that much thought gone into governing, and then they are suddenly there with the levers on power, and they're not quite sure which buttons they can pull and which ones they can't. They have had years of preparation for this second term. Project 2025 is coming to life. And I don't think we should be surprised at anything that has happened, because it has all been presaged in that kind of weighty tome that was prepared by right-wing think tanks and people who believed that the president should almost virtually have absolute authority. And so the old idea of America as three co-equal branches of government is going, and instead you have got Donald Trump accruing more and more power to himself, and more people intimidated and thinking we have to do what he says, otherwise we're in deep trouble.
So do you think this time around they've got a much more calculated plan for the media?
Yes, I do. I think there is much more calculation gone into this. I don't think that anything is happening by accident. I think they want to turn the screw, whether it be on conventional news reporting, whether it be in what happens on late night television with the comedians and satirists. It's everywhere. And you're seeing various different organizations suing for peace in their own way. And if you're a public corporation, then you're going to sue for peace. And you've got very few people who are standing up and saying, you know what, we won't be intimidated. And fair play to Rupert Murdoch, ironically, at the state banquet last night with Donald Trump, because the Wall Street Journal is not caving over its reporting of that letter that Donald Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein for his birthday. The New York Times is privately owned by a very wealthy billionaire. They can afford to stand firm. You've got the Atlantic magazine, which is kind of owned by the widow of Steve Jobs. She can stand firm, but not a lot else. The American media ecosystem is running pretty scared of Donald Trump at the moment. And it's not just in the media landscape, it's in the legal landscape, it's in all sorts of corporates as well. Everywhere there is a different atmosphere that people are in fear of him, and that's what he wants.
And so do you see a distinction then between the companies, it seems to be mainly the news organizations that are fighting against Trump, compared to maybe the more corporate organizations like Paramount who seem to be complying? Are you seeing that distinction quite clearly?
Yeah, there is a distinction. And look, you know, you talked about the Donald Trump first term. In the Donald Trump first term, the great phrase that everyone was using was, you know, people were taking a knee. In the second term, they're bending the knee. Everywhere you look, you see people thinking, I want to sue for peace, I'll capitulate, I just want to get a deal, I want to get them off my back. And you look at the CBS capitulation over the editing of an interview with Kamala Harris for 60 Minutes. What possible interest is it of Donald Trump how the interview was edited? It was just a normal edit, yet Donald Trump sued and CBS settled. ABC News also settled with Donald Trump. You've seen the LA Times, you've seen the Washington Post changing sort of editorial policies on, kind of what the guidelines should be. These are profound changes for media organizations, not driven because executives at the top have thought, what is the right thing for us to do right now? They are being driven by what will make Donald Trump happy and what does it take to get Donald Trump to leave us alone?
Just going back to Jimmy Kimmel briefly, we haven't heard anything from him yet since being taken off indefinitely, as it's being put. Do you think he should apologise?
Just because, say Jimmy Carr had made a joke on Channel 4 late night, and then you had the head of Ofcom saying, unless he is fired immediately, we're going to shut down Channel 4, Channel 4 altogether. I think people would think that was pretty rum. I think people would think that was pretty strange. And that is the equivalent of what has happened with the head of the Federal Communications Commission, who have the power, saying, you know what, unless Kimmel is fired, we are going to take away ABC's broadcasting license. I mean, talk about taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
And more widely then, John, we're hearing about President Trump saying he wants to designate anti-fascist groups as terrorist organisations. It's been reported that he wants to bring in executive orders on political violence and hate speech. Is this the end of US democracy? Is it too dramatic to say that?
It's facing its challenges at the moment right now. I think Benjamin Franklin talked about the great experiment of US democracy as one of the founding fathers nearly 250 years ago. And, there are those who think that the experiment is sort of foundering at the moment. I think the problem is, if Donald Trump wants to tackle political violence, absolutely 100% right, so it should be. What happened to Charlie Kirk was reprehensible, disgusting. Differences of view are sorted out and resolved at the ballot box in a proper, thriving democracy. But there is wrong on both sides. There is wrongdoing by the right, there is wrongdoing by the left. Just to think that this is only a problem of the left is to ignore reality.
So we talk about the left and right. Where does this go now then, do you think?
I think that Donald Trump will try to exert greater control over the media. I think he wants to get a media that is more to his liking. I think the direction of travel is clear. I think America is becoming more authoritarian than we have seen in generations. And I think that this is a bumpy time for US democracy, no doubt about it.
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens for sure. John, we'll have to leave it there, but Jon Sopel, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.